Hi guys, so this is Aaron Dade, and this is the second part to the getting over your ego. And what we're going to talk about today is the Holy Spirit glow that should be in you. On a consistent basis, you should be working on this on a regular basis. And really, this has to do with surrendering to God's alignment. So you have to throw your ego in the trash in the beginning. And today, the glow is why I'm doing that. Why am I throwing my ego in the trash? Why am I submitting? Why am I doing all these things? Because that's the first question men are going to ask. Why is there another opinion better than mine that I should be following? I can't see God necessarily. I can't touch God. So why am I having to follow what he says instead of what I think? And so I have a couple verses that I would like to go over just to explain this, the way that I had to see it when I was having a very difficult time. I think that it's important that people know that this is not an easy thing that you should take lightly. You should really understand what's at stake here when you need to refill that, why you need to refill that glow, why you need to surrender to God's alignment, why you have to throw your ego in the trash, why men have to do this specifically. you know um and before we get into that, just a lot of times I like to separate different time frames that I release videos, because I want to be sure of the information that I'm releasing before I just start thinking about everything God is talking to me about. And when I'm having my relationship with Him and speaking to Him, I want to make sure that I'm telling people exactly the information that's being told to me. And we went over this, God and I went over this several different times. And these are the verses that He explained to me specifically. And so we're in Exodus chapter 20, and that's where the 10 commandments are, when he was speaking to Moses. And we all are familiar with the 10 commandments, but and I had heard them since I was a child. I knew all about the 10 commandments before, and now reading it, it's funny to me. Especially, it's very funny to me that I had never actually heard of any of this, and it's right here in the 10 commandments. So the reason why is that we need to be surrendering to God's alignment, and we need to be throwing our ego in the trash and following His will and consulting Him on all decisions, is because, as it reads here, and I want to pay special attention to right here in chapter 20, verse 5, where it says, you must not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God who will not tolerate your affection for any other gods. I lay the sins of the parents upon their children. The entire family is affected, even children in third and fourth generations of those who reject me. But I lavish unfailing love for 1,000 generations on those who love me and obey my commands. So, what he's saying in this verse, as which, I mean, it just screamed out to me about, when we're talking about the glow and we're talking about surrendering to His alignment. He's like, this is why. Because I have children, my dad obviously had children because I'm here. I have a grandfather, great grandfather, so forth and so on. And a lot of the things that I suffered from, my father suffered from, his father suffered from, and this is about generations. This is a generational battle. This is not something that where it's just like, oh yeah, well, it's just my lifetime. This is not about you at all. It's about the generations that are after you and how they're going to be affected through your life. And if you're living your life the way that God says you should be living your life, then you can expect 1,000 generations after your life to be blessed lavishly. And if you're not, you can expect 3 or 4 generations after you to be cursed with the same generational curses that you have. And those have to do with your decision making and the things that you're doing. Specifically, it has to do with the covenant agreement that you have with God. So again, I think, man, I just think that's so important to look at the generations that could possibly be cursed or can be blessed based on the decisions that we make every single day. I think that's extremely important. You know, when you go into the next verse that I would like to go over is in Exodus, and it is Exodus, I believe. Hold on, excuse me. That's what it is. It's Exodus chapter 31, verses 12 through 17. And this is where you start with the glow. And again, this is something that I had seen and heard of a million times and never actually looked at it like this, how the Lord explained it to me. So anyway, reading, the Lord gave these instructions to Moses. Tell the people of Israel, be careful to keep my Sabbath day, for the Sabbath is a sign of the covenant between me and you from generation to generation. It is given so you may know that I am the Lord who makes you holy. You must keep the Sabbath day, for it is a holy day for you. Anyone who desecrates it must be put to death. Anyone who works on that day will be cut off from the community. You have 6 days each week for your ordinary work, but the seventh day must be a Sabbath day for complete rest, a holy day dedicated to the Lord. Anyone who works on the Sabbath must be put to death. The people of Israel must keep the Sabbath day by observing it from generation to generation. This is a covenant obligation for all time. It is a permanent sign of my covenant with the people of Israel. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, but on the seventh day he stopped working and was refreshed. Now, that's a lot of words and information to kind of go over, but just to go over it really quickly, he said covenant several times and generation to generation several times. That's not on accident. It's not an accident that he mentioned covenant, that he mentioned generation to generation, and that for all time that you should look at 6 work days and at least 1 day of rest. Now, if you think about Sunday, what's the first thing that men think about? Well, football or sports or anything besides God. Let's move the church service back because, football is going to be early and people won't show up, or whatever the deal is. Most people are not thinking about putting God first on this day, but he clearly says that, again, we go back to the generational curses and generational what he'll do to other generations if you're not living up to his covenant agreements with you. And we're just talking about 1 day. This is not like how you deal with your finances or how you deal with your relationships. He didn't go into anything extremely huge. It's just how you treat 1 day. And he even explained, I created the heavens and the earth in a week and took a day off. So you have plenty of time to do things. Don't tell me I don't have enough time. You have plenty of time. What you choose to do with your time is a whole nother conversation. And so it's very important that people really understand, especially men, because during the fall, he did not call for Eve. When there was an issue, he called for Adam. When Eve ate the apple, gave it to Adam, and then they ended up hiding, because they knew they were naked. They had all types of problems. Now they ended up hiding. He didn't say, where's Eve? No, he said, where's Adam? I'm talking to the men. You guys need to understand that you're the leaders, and the decisions that you make are going to affect the generations that come after you, whether you have children or not, or whatever happens. Everything that happens, if you have a wife and kids or a family, however it's going to pan out, it goes good, it's going to be because you lived a life that had God's principles in it. And if it goes bad, then you know exactly why. It's not like you have no idea what happened or why it happened. He makes it extremely clear. Oh man, I lost my other verse, but either way, he makes it extremely clear to how you're supposed to live your life and what you're supposed to be doing. And a lot of times, men especially, we just don't want that responsibility. We don't want to be accountable for that. We want we want to learn on the job and say, and then when stuff happens, oh well, I didn't know, and I don't want to do that now. Well, it's way too late. Like, I remember when I first had children, I was like, oh man, I didn't know this was gonna be that hard. Well, what do you think? Like, it's definitely gonna be difficult. It's a whole nother generation. It's a whole nother aspect of how you should live your life. And then reading the word, especially, and realizing that a lot of the decisions that I made and that I will make will affect my children and my children's children and their children, and so forth and so on. The easiest way to explain it to you sports fans is, I know who Del Curry is. He's Steph Curry's father, but I mean, realistically, like, Del Curry never won a ring. He never won a championship. He's not a huge NBA star or anything, but look at his children. And he trained his children in the word before they ever learned basketball. And now Steph, his brother, they're all in the league. They're all in the NBA. And that's not a coincidence. The next generations are all blessed just because of Dell's decisions. And to us, a lot of times, to men, it's about status and where we are, in life, like what type of job we have, how much money we make, things of that nature. But to God, this is not. This is a fight over generations. And we need to be very respectful of that. And also, this goes into your glow when you're taking way too much time doing other things besides spending time with God and having a real relationship with God. That's where your glow starts, is having a real relationship with God where you're following his commands. And it's very clear in this verse, covenant obligation, and how he talks about covenants and how he talks about the obligation that men are supposed to have. When you don't do those things, and especially on that Sabbath day when you're just working constantly, I'm overworking myself, you never have any time to refill that glow. You never have any time to refill God's love inside of you. So you're always leaking. And who are you leaking on? The closest people to you. So if you have a family, you're leaking all over them. If you have your friends, your closest friends, you're leaking all over them, whether you want to or not, whether you feel like it or not. That's what's happening. And so as you look at different verses within the Bible, and it's all through here, but these are just ones that the Holy Spirit specifically pointed out to me, because this is where this all really begins, is in the Ten Commandments, where he said, okay, well, follow my commands or don't, but if you don't, here are the consequences. And I treat everybody the same. This is what he said to Moses. It's not just anybody. He said this to Moses. This is how I'm going to treat people. And if you remember correctly, when Moses made a mistake, he treated Moses like that. It's not like he changed the rules because somebody was special. David made a mistake, treated David like that. It's not like God changes the rules based on your status. He doesn't. He's no respecter of persons. He treats everybody the same. My wife in particular, in our relationship in particular, like, she frequently she talks to me, and really, to be honest with you, 100% honest with you, her glow is what really attracts me to her. Because the glow is really stuff that your wife has that you don't have. And my glow is what attracts her to me. It has nothing to do with necessarily looks, or it's the fact that, when I speak to our children, I speak to them about God. And I tell my kids, like, when they're like, hey, yeah, are you going to do this, Dad? Well, I'm not a man that I should lie. So yeah, I said I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. So when it comes to the glow that my wife has, and I'm kind of going over all this in my mind at the same time, is like when we were not together, and then as we're kind of restoring our and coming back together, before any of that happened, the conversation that really caught my eye was her relationship with God and how she was no longer leaning directly on me to be happy or to feel anything really. She was leaning on him. And that created a great interest in me. One, because I was like, God, I know God's a man and I'm made in his likeness and image, and I'm a jealous God. I'm jealous, not God, but I'm a jealous person like that too. I want to know who that is. It created interest, is my point. So, ladies, like for the restoration process, you have to change and renew your mind. You can't keep doing the same things expecting the result to be different. You have to really get engaged with God so then he can direct you to what to deal with your husband. Like when I speak to men all the time, I talk about accountability. And the first thing that God had me do was stand in the mirror, look yourself directly in the eyes, not at the floor, not at your hands. Look yourself soul to soul directly in the eyes and don't think about your wife. Think about just any other person, okay? Any other, female, not male, but any other mate. And would you want to be with you the way that you are right now? And the answer for me was no. Like, no, I wouldn't want to be with me the way that I am right now. Under any circumstance, I wouldn't want to be with me the way that I am right now. And for females, if you're able to do that and look yourself in the mirror and say, well, no, I wouldn't. I would change this or I would change that. Or I've heard him say change this or change that. Really understand what he's saying. Not just on the surface what he's saying. Go to God and say, what does this really mean? Because then God can explain it to you from every perspective. He knows every different perspective that men are going to come up with or talk about. But you really have to understand that this starts with your relationship with God. Because at the end of the day, if this is a restoration process or any type of relationship, if it's not going to be based in the foundation's not in God, then you're going to end up with the same result. So you need to be able to say, my relationship with God has gotten stronger now that he's gone, not weaker, or not I'm just begging to God because he's gone or she's gone if it's a male. And they're gone with the kids. Like in my situation, she was gone with the kids, and so I was like, she left me and this or that, and I was just in a pity party and feeling sorry for myself. And first thing, giving up the control and holding myself accountable and having to throw my ego in the trash really had to do with my relationship with him and being able to not just hear him. I've always been able to hear him, but really seek him. And what are you asking me? And when I looked at my wife and seen that her relationship with God was getting better than my relationship with God, that really brought interest and was like, okay, well, where do we go from here? Like, how are we going to get better? Okay, well, if God has all the answers, which he does, I want to know that. I want to be around that. And that is where, a lot of times ministering to women and men or talking to them, giving them counseling about, their relationships, I hear a lot of conversations that have to do with communication and stuff like that. And if you can't communicate with your spouse, if you can't communicate with God, you really have there's no way in the world you're going to be able to communicate with your spouse. If you can't be honest with God and really bare your heart with God, then you just have, first off, he's not here. So if you can't sit there and have a conversation with God with something that's not there, you have no shot talking to somebody that's right in front of you, or even through a text message or on the phone or whatever. So like I said, it begins really with your relationship with God. And for men, that's what I was really talking about. Is your relationship with God. Because as the leaders, really, nothing happens unless you do it. You know, you have to, this is follow the leader. You're the leader and you need to start doing things. This is where you put your big boy pants on and you start moving towards God. And then women, if you're not already doing that because you create the environment that makes him comfortable leading, if you're not doing that, then here we go again with, this is where we have problems. The alignment's all messed up. You know, you think about a car, if the alignment's all messed up, the car's not going to go straight. It's just not. That's not how it's made. Same thing with a relationship. You know, and relationships are based on communication. And if you cannot communicate with God, and that's the first place that you definitely should start, is communication and relationship with God. And that's how you create that glow. That's how you consistently create that glow and refill that glow and maintain that glow. And so my wife and I are going to do a Q&A either this weekend or next week. We definitely want to go over it and go over the different verses that we'd like to add into that Q&A. And then also the next video, I really wanted to talk about not only starting the glow, maintaining it a little bit, I'm going to go into, and then improving it, you know, because step one is not the end of it. You know, there's no longer just happily, it's not just happily ever after that. Like, no, there's work to be done. As God said to me when we were first restoring, my wife and I were first restoring, he said, playtime is over. Sorry, but playtime is over. You know, this is not a video game. This is real life. This is a fight over generations, and you have to fight. So, I just wanted to make sure that I touch bases with everybody, and thank you very much for watching your video. Aaron Dade here again. I'll see you guys soon.